In the current Daf, Kesuvos Daf Lamed Al, begin on the top line of the Yomi. But the Gemara goes back to a teaching that it brought up in the previous Daf, the teaching of Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, because we had opened up our parak 2 Daf ago, parak Naris, and we said, first of all, our Mishnah is not like the opinion of the Tan of the Bryce of Shimon Menashe. And then we said, on the previous time we said also that our Mishnah is also excluding the opinion of Rabbi Shloimy, because we said in our Mishnah that certain cases like Michayev, Elu Naishush Knas, and we mentioned cases that would be Chayev or Karis, and still you'd be Chayev for the Knas. We said that's not like Rabbi who he says he made him a Kippur Shabbos with Tashlumin, that he made also that even Chayev Krisis is going to exclude you from the Chayev Tashlumin, not only from Chayev Mitzvah Besin. And our Gemara brought that Rabbi Shloimy agrees in a certain case, and that's where we started discussing that halachic teaching. Some of those discussed in today's daf are almost Mesechta Shabbos type of sugis, but it comes into our Mesechta of Zerek Ches Mishus Ram. Someone throws an arrow Shus Ram, what's actually really a Bakama, but both. The Kar Shiram Behalichas, and it tears someone's clothing when it's in the middle of going, what the halach is going to be, which relates to the concept of Akir Tzarech Hanachi, later in Mesechta Shabbos, about that the picking up of the object is actually for the necessity of the landing, because we know for Hilchah Shabbos Vaytzah it needs to have Akir and Hanacha. So therefore the Akir is already part of the halacha, part of the malacha of Vaytzah. The Gemara brings two distinctions between Zrika B'Shus Ram and Achilas Chayla. That although they both seem to have a beginning and an end, however, there's a fundamental difference, two differences. One is by Zrika, you can't have it land without an Akira, you have to have an Akira. And if you want to take it back, you can't take it back. It's already in motion. Achilas Chayla, on the other hand, you don't have to do any hagubah, because you could bend down and eat it. And also, if you want, you could retract before you actually eat it, even though you lifted it up. And then the Gemara is going to show two differences between those two different cases. Then the Gemara has three explanations for what is called Issa Shabbos V'Gneva Banke Echad, that you violate them both at the same time, because as we mentioned in the previous stop, this is called Kimli Rabnei. When you have two penalties, one's more severe than the other one, you only get the more severe one, but it's only if it happens at the same time. In the case of Ayibagar B'Yetziv, if someone was dragging out, stealing someone's object on Shabbos out to the Rosh Hashanah, how three explanations of how that could be that they're happening at the same time. So before in terms of the concept of today's daf, Achirtzah and Avar Rosh Hashanah, taking out from one domain to another domain, or carrying the alamas from Rosh Hashanah. The Naza is famous teaching Mahalach Ta'im that walking is like stopping. Every time you're going, like those fancy cars that save you gas, it's not constantly in motion. It's stopping, going, stopping, going, stopping, going. A person when he's walking is also stopping and going. So you have the Akira Nocha, Akira Nocha, Akira Nocha. And the other Shalom Chashuv like Karba Alabah. A person's hand is like 4x4. So although for the halachas of Akira Nocha has to be from the area of Dal and Dal, a person's hand is not that area, but it's a chash so chash of the significance of the person's hand that it is like a Malkam Dalid al Dal. So begin the card Daf top line of the Amid. We had said from the previous daf, from Chlomi, like we said, he says Kimli Ramne applies even to Chiba creases, not like the halacha of our Mishnah, just like it applies to Chiba Misa Bez, and that's why we said that our Mishnah is not like him, because he would hold that you would not be chayiv tashlumin of a knas, of violating a girl because of the knas, because he says it has karas, and karas would be also Kimli Ramne. As our Gemara mentions from what we said a teaching the previous daf, Kufa. Amar Rav Chizda says, Maidrim Nachan agrees. Again, although he says that when you can do chiyuv kares, you're not going to have the monetary payment. But in the following case, he would agree that you would have the liability of both of them, which is, let's say someone steals his friend's forbidden fat and he eats it, shu chayiv. He's going to be liable for the monetary payment. Why? He's chayiv kares for eating chaylev. Why is he going to be chayiv on tishlum? I thought you said kibbutz ramnei. Oh, because you're crying the chayiv because it's not happening at the same time. It's not simultaneous. He's already liable for the theft once he took it before he came to the Isav Chaylev of the Chiv Karetz. It's not happening at the same time. You don't take him around. Says the Gemara, Lema pleaded above. Let's say this teaching of Nochel Kana disagrees with Rabbi. Why? Because Omar Rabbi, he says the following teaching. And that's what we're going to see. Is it the same thing or is it different? Hazardik Chetz. Someone throws an arrow. He shoots the arrow, Mitchilas Arba L'Seif Arba, from the beginning of Daled Amos to end of Daled Amos, in Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, which is the Melacha of Haitzah, which is, even though you're not taking off from one domain to another domain, but that's the part of the Halacha Mishma Sinai, it's the same thing as Haitzah. And now the Kana Shirayim Balichasai, the Vesh from the Mama who put it out there is hanging on the line, and it shoots through the laundry hanging as he's shooting the arrow Daled Amos in Rosh Hashanah. So now he tore someone's clothing at the same time that he's doing Haitzah. Says Reb Oven, Potter, he doesn't have to pay for that silk bedspread that was torn in his malacha beitzah. Why? Sha'akida tzorech hanochi. When you pick up an object, it's necessary for the malacha beitzah as much as when you put it down. So therefore, even though the monetary liability happened before the arrow landed, Dalaramis after where it was shot, you're still going to be potter. Why? Because since this happened between the akira and the hanacha, so the misa and the tashlumin are boing ka'echad. It's happening at the same time. Why? Because the akira is a necessity for the hanacha. So it comes out, from the moment you did the akira, you started the malacha. The malacha is not when you put it down. The malacha is one big action from the akira to the hanacha. So therefore, the misa of Chilul Shabbos happens for those 10 seconds. In second number 7, when it talks through that clothing hanging from the laundry line, that Chiyav Tashlumin is happening at the same time as the Chiyav Misa. Oh, so says the Gemara, wait a second. Hachanami. Then the case of Rav Chizda, you should say the same thing. Hagba, when you're picking up the piece of Treif and the Chelev, it's a necessity for the eating. According to the Bavin, you should not say like Rav Chizda. You should say that according to Mechem Makana, for a Chiyuv Kares would exempt you from Tashlumin, it's the same thing. Just like when you're shooting something, it's for the necessity of that it can land. Here also, I'm picking it up so that I can eat it. It's all Hechsher Mitzvah. It's all part of the same Hachana. I could only have a hanacha. It sounds like in the Gemara's question, like the Gemara's understanding that really akira is a hanacha. It's not that akira is really part of the malacha. Akira you need for the hanacha. I can't have a hanacha dalamas away unless I do an akira. I also can't eat the treif and the chaylev unless I pick it up. So why did I say it's one big action of the malach of the isser of eating chaylev? Just like I'm saying one big ma'isa chilul Shabbos, and therefore I should be exempt from tashlumin, not like the way Rav Chizah said. So the Gemara says, no, hachi hashta. Can you compare the two cases? No. It's not true. There's two differences between these cases. Hasam over there, in the case of the arrow, no, you cannot have a hanacha without an akira. The malacha of Haitzah requires an akira to pick it up and then to put it down. Over here, by the fats, you could eat the fats without picking it up. Why? You want to. You could bend down beneath an area of 3 tefachim, and you could eat it. Because as Rashi explains, less than 3 tefachim, it's not considered hagbah, so you weren't cutting it. So as long as you picked it up less than 3 tefachim on the ground. So I didn't do any hagbah. So if you're picking it up, that's not considered a hechsher, it's not considered part of the isser of eating chaylev. So then you did the geneva then. So that's the tashlumin. The kares is not till later when you actually eat it. That's one difference. If you had Akira before Shabbos, right? So we had those cases. We stuck on his hand, and he's there, and then when Shabbos starts, and then.
But then you could have Akira blur.
No, but then you wouldn't have the malacha. You would have to have some form of Akira to have the malacha of Shabbos. Or Inami, another difference you could say is Hasam over there by the arrow, if he would want to take it back once he shot the arrow, he can't take it back. It's already in flight. So therefore, the moment you did the akira, the end of tearing the sheets, the silk, has already been activated. The moment you do the akira, the projectile is already in the air. That's already has started. You did your action of the tearing and of the malacha that moment. Over here, when he picked up lechelev, let's say even you would say it's considered a hefsher, it's part of the thing, but if you want to, you can back out. So therefore you don't say the moment he picked it up, he started the eating. What do you mean you started the eating? They're saying stop, don't eat. You can still stop. So therefore it wasn't finalized then. It's not happening at the same time. You're picking up as one thing and you're eating as another thing. So those are two differences between the cases, and therefore it's not necessarily that Rabbi Oven would disagree with this teaching of Rav Chizah. Says the Gemara, Ma'ika bein haylish na haylish. Now, what's the difference between these two different interpretations that you told me? One difference you told me was that you could eat without picking it up. Another interpretation you told me that is because you could back out. So what's the difference between those two interpretations? The difference between them is Hamad or Sakin. If someone is carrying a knife, meaning he picked it up meaning he's holding it in his hand as he's walking, in the public domain. He tears clothing as he's walking. So the Gemara explains, according to that version that said, explaining Rebavin, why he says that your pater is because you can't put it down without picking it up, so it's part of it, and therefore that's why he says we'll say Kim Rabbaneh. You can't have the hanacha of the knife without picking it up, so therefore you would say Kim Rabbaneh, because it is considered one ma'isa. It's all considered, the Chil Shabbos was the moment you picked up the knife till you put it down. So therefore, you would say Kimul Ramne on the Tashlumin of what you tore as you walk. But according to the other interpretation, it said the reason why the case of the arrow is different than the case of eating the Chelim is because you can't take it back, it's already been shot. Here you could put it down, you're holding the knife, and therefore actually you would be chayiv according to that Manda Amar. If you were walking with a knife in Rosh Hashanah and you tore the sheets as you're walking, you'd be chayiv. Because that is not considered one action, because you could back out, you could put it down. At Gufa, the Gemara goes back to this teaching of Amr Above. We only introduced it because we introduced the teaching of Rav Chizda, which we had introduced in the previous Daf because of the previous discussion. And now that we introduced Rabbavin's teaching, because we thought it would contradict the teaching of Chizda, the Gemara explains it. Amr Above, he says, someone throws an arrow from the beginning of Dal Amos to the end of Dal Amos. The Kodesh Shirayim Balichas, and it tears silk cloth as it's going in motion. Patu is exempt, like we said, Shakir Tzarech Hanochi, because the picking up is a necessity for the placing down, and therefore it's all considered as one action. On that must about Bibi Barabai asks in the following price: Hagoyin of Kis b'Shabbos. Someone steals a purse, a wallet on Shabbos. So he picks it up in the person's property, and he takes it out to the Shus Rabbah. So Chayiv, he's liable for the payment, even though he's going to get executed for Chil Shabbos. Why? So it says the Brisa, Shekvar is Chayiv b'Geneva, because he's already been liable for the stealing to pay, because the halach is Hagbah, lifting up something, that's kind of wherever a person is. Even in someone else's private property. So it goes now and it becomes in the property of the thief, even to be liable for Einsim. Why? Because again, he's already been liable for the Geneva before he comes to the Issachar. Before he did the Chil Shabbos of carrying it out, he's already stolen it. He picked it up. You did Hagbah, you picked it up, you chayv the Geneva, and the Chil Shabbos only later. Now, let's say let's say he was dragging it out, meaning he never picked it up in the person's property. He never acquired it thus, because he never did Hagbah. He just took it out from the owner's domain. Says the Brisa, the pot is going to be exempt from the monetary payment. Why? Because the Chil Shabbos of carrying it out from his property, and the Chiv of the Geneva, which is only when he takes it out of his property, because again, he can't do Mashiach in someone else's property, and he didn't do Hagbah, so he only gets it the moment he gets out of his property. That moment you did Eitzah. So therefore, since it's Boin Ke'achad, you're going to be part of a monetary payment over there. Now, the Gemara asks, this is Rabbi Babai's question. When he picked it up in the person's property, and he acquired it, says the Gemara of Amai, why is he going to be chayiv for tashlumin? Because he told me we did a kinyan of Geneva when he picked it up, and the Chil Shabbos was only a minute later when he ran out of the property. But Hachanami Leim here also you should say, the way Rabbanan says, Hagbah tzarech ha'itzahi. When you picked it up, was necessary to take it out. So the moment you picked it up, you started the malacha of haitzah, which Shais explains it's according to one of the two approaches that we said before, but it's starting the haitzah. So you should say kinle b'dirabah b'nei. You already started that. It's one big action of akira tzarech hanacha. So why did you say that the malach of Shabbos was started the second you picked it up? That's the hagbah, that's the akira. Which necessary for the hanacha. So why is that any different in the case of the arrow? There you're exempt. Here also you should be exempt. Why you tell me then you can be chayav?
Is Geneva a one-time avera, or all the time as you hold on to somebody else's until you become the Ashes of Geneva, you over Geneva?
Right, I mean, it could be, but the shaila is, when did it start over here? Right.
It's a continuous action then, and it's...
Right, but right, even if, let's say, it would be every moment that you're not giving it back, like the button here, when did it start? If it started when you picked it up, and then, so, but it started also that same moment, the Chil Shabbos. So even when I picked up, I did Akba, and I did the Kinam Geneva, that same moment I picked it up, I did Akira. I did the Chil Shabbos. A minute later. No, that was part of the Ma'aseh Chil Shabbos. Because I kidded Tzarech Hanocha. So you should say Kim Rabbi. Why are you saying Michayv in such a case? So the Gemara says, okay, you know what we're talking about over here? He did pick it up. It's very Michayv for Geneva then. But it's not considered Akira. Why not? He picked it up and Asla had sneer. His intention was, he's like, I'm not getting out of here. These guys got cameras everywhere. I'm gonna hide it somewhere over here. I'll come back after the Shabbos, I'll find some way to get it out. But now I'm picking it up to hide it somewhere. Then he changed his mind. He's like, you know what, let me get out of here. Let me just take it and run. So therefore, that was not the Akira. Because Akira is only if you picked it up to take it out. You only changed your mind to subsequently take it out. And therefore, that was not the beginning of the Chil Shabbos. So the Gemara says, wait a second. In such a situation, would you be chayiv for Chil Shabbos? You're telling me that what? That you chayiv for both, because the Akira was not the moment when you picked it up, because you only changed your mind later. So therefore, then you're only being chayiv for Geneva, then for the Tashlumin, and the Issa Shabbos only came later. What is the Shabbos? What are you talking about? Why am I chayiv for both? But V'amad says the following halacha. Let's say somebody, Shabbos, he doesn't have patience, doesn't have a gedul. Say he's rearranging his room, putting the couch in, making this, making the rug over there, he's moving around objects. And then as he's moving around the object, he changes his mind, he takes it outside. He carries out on Shabbos. He's like, I can't have this in the house anymore, it's too long, I told you to get rid of it. She carries it out to the garbage on Shabbos. I'm done, no more. Because the garbage is going to take it out, and I know you don't carry on Shabbos, it's going to take it out, I'm done. Potter, the person's going to be exempt. Why not? Didn't they do a bona fide Ma'aseh Chil Shabbos? They carried it out to the street? No. Because when you originally picked it up, it wasn't with the intention of taking it out. You were first reorganizing the room. You were taking it from the right side of the room to the left side of the room, you were trying to figure it out. And then as you picked it up, as you're holding it, you're like, that's it, I'm taking it outside. So therefore, you're not going to be chayav for Chil Shabbos, because it wasn't in Akira and Anacha. Because Akira Rishayna was not for that purpose, to take it out. So wait a second. So if you tell me that the guy who's stealing over here, when he picked it up, his intention was to put it away somewhere, and then ultimately runs out of it with it, so he's not chayav for kara, he's not chayav for a skill, he's not chayav for mizbez, he's not chayav for Chil Shabbos, because he didn't do an akira. So what do you tell me? You explain to me that's going to be the case of when you'll have that it's not kim and it's not at the same time, so you'll be chayav for the Geneva and you'll be chayav for Chil Shabbos. There's no Chil Shabbos in such a case. So what do you tell me you're going to be chayav for Chil Shabbos? So there's something about law. Don't say like we just said before that he picked it up with the intention of hiding it. And let's see it. No, he picked it with the intention of taking it out. So when we had a difficulty with that. If that's the case, then we said, so let's say the picking up is considered a necessity of carrying it out. So then you should be part like we said, because of Kim Rabbi. So the what we're talking about here is Kishal Amar, where the person picked it up with the intention of taking it out, but they stopped. When you stop, that's a hanacha. It's a placing down of the first akida. The Chiyuv Shabbos is not going to come when you originally picked up the object. It's going to come when you actually uproot your body. Where after you stopped, you then again start walking again with the intention of taking it out. What's called akiras gufay is akiras hachefetz. Picking up your body is considered picking up the object. But you already have the Geneva from the first time you picked it up. So since you stopped, that's why it's not happening at the same time. That's why you can be chayav for the Geneva and for the Chil of Shabbos. So the Gemara says, wait a second, I don't understand. Amad Lamai, when the guy stopped walking, what did he stop for? There's two primary reasons why you would stop. Ila Kasev, if it's because you need to shoulder the burden, you need to figure out how to readjust your package. Urchihu, that's considered normal, and therefore your stopping is not considered a hanacha to nullify the original akira from the malach of Shabbos, because everyone stops for a nanosecond or whatever. So if you're stopping for that, that's not considered a stop. So why would that say that you would be, it would be considered that it wasn't the first akira? Ella rather, no, it's Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. Must be talking about stopping to take a break. He's not stopping to shoulder the burden. If that's the case, then you stop. And now you start again. So the first akira was the geneva, and the second akira when you pick up your body is the chilul Shabbos, therefore you can be chayav for both. The problem is, says him, wait a second. What do you tell me? If you're doing it to shoulder the burden, then what would you say, based on the interpretation we're saying as a contingent of days? So the potter, you would tell me that it'd be exempt from the monetary payment. Why? Because we want to be meyashiv the teaching or above. And you would tell me that the chiyuv Shabbos, that's happening because of the first time you picked it up, which is the same moment that you acquired the purse, because you did hagbah. Oh, so the misa and tashluim are happening at the same time like Rabbanan. Then you want to tell me, yeah, and then you'll be potter. The problem is, if that's the case, Adatani, instead of teaching me in the Brisa, a different case, the Brisa tells us two cases. Brisa says if you picked it up and then you walked out, you chayav them both. And the Brisa says another case. If you dragged it out and then you dragged it out, the moment you dragged it out, you're going to be stealing it at the same time as doing malach mitzvah, then you can be potter. That's what the Brisa is contrasting. Many Brisa are like that. It's like Pesukim and Mishlei, contrast one to the other. It says, you're going to be chayav, you're going to be potter. Chayav is when you did hagbah, which we're trying to figure out why. Isn't that hakir tzarech hanacha? So we're saying, I'll tell you why. Because here what happened was, is you picked it up and then you stopped. Oh, so the first picking up was hagbah or kinyav geneva, and you stopped. Oh, so you didn't do the chilul Shabbos. So that was only happens when you pick up your body again. So that's happening later. Great. That's how you can have chiyav of the tashlum and of the misa.
Even dragging, there's a hagbah.
No hagbah.
How to get to your hand? Once it gets to your hand, it's hagbah.
No, you're dragging it out. That's not going to your hand. You're pulling it out of its property. You're just pulling it out of its
How
property.
did he pull it?
You pulled it by its nose. Whatever.
So once he touches his nose and he schleps it down.
No, hagbah is only when you pick it up a certain amount off the ground. You didn't pick it up off the ground.
It's a height issue. It's not in the hand.
Right. Nothing to do with that. Exactly right. He picked it up. If it went into his hand, there's something else possible we're going to see in the Gemara. But you're just pulling it. You didn't. It's not in your hand. You're pulling it. So now you tell me a case when you meet potter of when you drag it. So the Gemara says, wait a second. And if what we just said is true, that if you'd be oimid lafish, that if you stop to take a breather, that's the case that you can have. But if you stop to shoulder the burden, then you'd be potter, because that's all considered the original akira. Then at the time, instead of saying the case of Torah, that you're dragging, going out, then potter can be exempt because the Issa Genevas happened in the same moment of it. So when you drag it out of the property, what do you mean? Why do you have to pick a whole different case? You could have differentiated in the case itself. That's always considered a bigger chiddush. In the case of when you picked it up itself, you could say a case of when you mechayev, and you could say a case that you be potter. You couldn't say like this. But then from when do we say that you can mechayev, which is the ratio of the brisa, the first part, by lafish. If you stop, just take a breather. Stop the breather. So the geneva was when you picked it up. And that was not the akira for Shabbos because you stopped. You never walked out. When you pick up your body to ultimately walk out, is then you're doing the chilul Shabbos, so you can be chayav for both. But if you're shouldering the burden, then potter. Again, it's only a question because of Rabbanan. Because Rabbanan, you're trying to be Yashav how he works with the Bryce, and then you're trying to say that when the Akira is a Tzarech HaNoch, it's considered one big Ma'aseh Chilul Shabbos, and therefore our question was when you picked it up, you should be potter, because I only walked out a minute later, when I picked it up was the Akira Tzarech HaNoch. So we're saying, no, it's because he stopped, and he stopped Lofush. Yeah, okay, but what happens if he stopped L'Kasif? That means to say you still have the original akira, because stopping to shoulder is not considered a stop. It's like you're still going. So then say that's the case of potter. You're saying a whole other case of dragging? No, say the case of picking up. And you'll still be potter because it's the original akira, which is tzarech hanacha, which Rabbanan says that would make you potter. So the Gemara says, Ella, rather, you're right, don't explain the case that it's talking about where he stopped. And even so, the chiyuv Shabbos of the akira is not because of the original akira, of when you picked it up. Rather, it's when you move your body the last steps when you're moving out of the house. Why? How can that be? What would that be based on? What do you mean? You picked it up and then you're walking. So isn't that the same thing? Isn't that, we're going with your above and the akira tzarech hanacha. So isn't that the akira? No, it's not the akira. You know why? Because Haman, you know what the town of Bryce is? Benazai. It's Benazai. The Oman that he says in the first parak of Shabbos, Mahalech ka'oimedami. When you're walking, it's like you're stopping and going and stopping and going. Every time you pick up your foot, it's Nakira. Every time you put down your foot, it's Anacha. So therefore, when did you acquire the Geneva? When you Chayav Tashlum is the moment you picked it up in his bedroom. The Chiv Misa was the last step you walked out of his property. That's when the akira and anocha happen, because every step is akira anocha, according to Ben Azai. Which Trace discusses how you chai mar dal ams b'shus ram according to Ben Azai, which he says that Ben Azai would agree, but he brings actually the Yerushalmi that actually says it would have to be the famous Bekoifis, Rav Springen, the famous the whole thing. It's all based on their shtickle. But again, how you chai dal ams b'shus ram, you stop and going. You never did. You have to jump. If you jumped 8 feet around, so then that you would be chayv mar according to Yerushalmi Ben Azai. But according to Ben Azai, mahal chayv it's not happening at the same time. The akira is only the moment you walked out of the property. Says the Gemara. Wait a second. Okay, I have a question to you. What's if, let's say, you threw it, meaning you picked it up and you threw it? What would that halacha be? So you're telling me that potter could be exempt from the tashlumin, which happens through the chiyuv of Shabbos, because when is the chiyuv of Shabbos happening? When you picked it up. Because there is no other akira. I mean, you're telling me you're answering me and telling me that ma'al kolim medami. So it's not happening at the same time. You're walking every time, stop, go. What happens if the guy's in his bedroom and he picks up the purse and he throws it out the window and it lands in the street and he steals the guy's purse? What do you tell me? It'd be potter. Because that picking up, that hagba, was the akira of the hanacha, the tzarech hanacha. You didn't walk, you threw it. If that's the case, then again, I have the same question. I want to know why you have to give me another case of megadol and dragging to tell me you're going to be potter. I can find you in the case of hagba itself that you can be potter. You told me chayiv. When's the case of chayiv? When it's not happening at the same time because it's like Ben Azai. But then the case of a tour could be also, but when you give me chayiv b'house when you're walking. So therefore the akira and agba is not the same thing, because the akira is only the second you walk out. Aval zayrik potter, but if you throw it, you can be potter. Why? Because like Rabbavin's teaching, because the akira is the tzarech hanoch, it's the starting of the chil Shabbos, which is the same as agba. So it's a good question. You're right. Technically, you could have said agba itself also, but megav meyotze isrulay. Please explain why we didn't answer this before. It's specifically over here. No, we needed to tell you the chiddush of dragging it out. Why? So you would have thought to say, that's not the normal way of carrying something out, like dragging it out. And therefore I would say there's no chiyuv of chil Shabbos at all. Kamash Malan, you're right, you could have said a chiddush in the case of agba itself of throwing. Shtreisa says it's not such a normal thing, so therefore, but dragging out has another chiddush, because you would have thought maybe there's no chiyuv of mitzvah at all. Kamash Shalom, that you're going to be chayiv, and therefore, but you're going to be potter because it's happening at the same time. But that's the chiddush of the case of Begar v'Hoylach. Now, it says in my way, it's like Ubamai. You're telling me that you needed, the reason why you said Mekar v'Yotze was because you needed to tell me the chiddush of that case that it is considered a normal way of carrying out. That was your chiddush. You had to tell me it's a normal way of carrying out, so there is going to be chil Shabbos. So that's why you're going to be potter from Tashlumin, because it's happening at the same time. That's why you told me that case, even though you could have told me in Akbar itself, a case of potter. You bedafka told me, tell me chiddush, that it is considered a normal way of carrying out. What case, what is it that you would have thought is not normal, that you tell me it is normal? If it's a huge sack of money the guy's got under his mattress, a big bump in his mattress, it was pretty obvious he's hiding all that cash on his mattress. He's dragging out this big sack, which is a big load, too big to carry. Obviously, orchehu, that's normal to drag it out. So obviously we'd be chayv for it. So what's the big chiddush in that case? If it's very small, it's a wallet. It's a lav orchehu. That's obviously very not normal. It's very abnormal to drag out a wallet. So why would he be chayv for Shabbos? That's not orche. That's not the normal way. It's considered shino. You're not chayv. And the Rebbe says, "Come on, b'mitzi." It's a medium size. So it's not too big that it's normal, and it's not too small that it's abnormal. And that's the chiddush that, okay, if it's medium size, then you can be chayv. So wait a second, the Gemara has another technical question about this. So it says the Gemara, where exactly, when you dragged out, so again, we're really getting off a little bit here, but once we brought in this brisa, we want to understand the case of this brisa. So with the where exactly did you drag out this medium-sized wallet, or whatever it is, to that you're going to be chayiv Shabbos and Genev at the same time when you took it out, to say Kimmel B'Rabneh? That's the case we said potter, because it's happening at the same time. Where did you drag it out? If the guy's house is right there abutting a Rosh Hashanah. So when you pull it out of his door, you're in the street. You're in those places in New York that mamish, the door opens up and you're in the street. So Isser Shabbos Ikka, the problem is, I understand that you're Chayav Vaitzah, but Isser Geneva Leka. You're telling me that both happening at the same time. It's not true, you're not having Isser Geneva. Because, as Rashi explains, if you're doing Meshicha by pulling it without Hagbah, the assumption is that you're not Kohen Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is not an area you have a domain over here to drag it. It has to be somewhere where you have somewhat of a private area that you could do Meshicha. It's like taking it to yourself. In the street, it's not considered taking it to yourself, so you're not having Isser Geneva. So that's not a good case. And never talking about where your property, let's say, is next door. The neighboring courtyard is from that next door neighbor, is you guys share a fence. So you're pulling it out of his yard into your yard. So you're going from his domain to your domain. Problem is, it's a Geneva, because they only have the Isra of stealing. Isra Shabbos like it, no Isra Shabbos, because Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Hashanah is not a Chiv, the Yaisa of a Chiv Misa.
So what happens when you did pick it up? This is the case when you got it.
Right.
When you did pick it up, you picked it up from where? From the owner's...
In his property, I picked it up.
Whose property?
The victim. The victim's property. Just doing Hagbah anywhere is kind, even in the victim's property. Doing Hagbah is a kinyan. But Mashiach is a very different type of a kinyan. So therefore, you don't have it. Manashach, what's the case talking about? It doesn't work Rosh Hashanah, doesn't work Rosh Hashanah. So since Iman Light Shricha knows it's necessary, we're talking about the Afkin L'Tzidei Rosh Hashanah. We're talking about where he took it out to the sides of the public domain, which is near the houses, which they give a distance from the houses, and they put these stones and they put these type of barriers to distance, all the wagons that scrape against from the people that are going there. That's called Tzidei Rosh Hashanah. So it's the sides of the public domain. So the Gemara says, okay, wait a second, but come on, who are you going like? Because there's a machlekes, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbanan, in Erev and Perkul Gagas regarding how you qualify Tzidei Rosh Hashanah, the sides of Rosh Hashanah. So Ikra Rabbi Lezer, there was like Rabbi Lezer Dama that he said Tzidei Rosh Hashanah is Kish Rosh Hashanah Dami, that the side of Rosh Hashanah is like Rosh Hashanah. So okay, so you didn't really gain anything. Isser Shabbos is a Geneva Leka. So you have Isser Shabbos, Kish Rosh Hashanah, but you don't have Isser Geneva because it was Rosh Hashanah. And Ikra Rabbanan Dami that they say Tzidei Rosh Hashanah is like Rosh Hashanah Dami. So again, it's a Geneva, because you have an Isser Geneva because it's not Rosh Hashanah, so it's a domain that you could do a Mashiach on. But Isser Shabbos, like again, it's not Rosh Hashanah. So Carmelis, whatever you want to call it, but it wasn't the Isser of Shabbos Daraisa, the B'chai Misa. So what are you talking about? So the Gemara says Lo'ilam Rabbi Eliezer. So approach number one says the Gemara, it's going like Rabbi Eliezer that Tzidei Rosh Hashanah is like Rosh Hashanah. But when did he say that the size of the public domain is like the public domain? When did we say this? The Shabbos. Tzidei Rosh Hashanah is not the public domain, but regarding the laws of Shabbos, we're going to consider it as out like Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because the Zimna Dudach Yirab Ma'ilazim. Because sometimes what happens is the street is too full, and people push their way and they go onto the sides. So for Hahilcha Shabbos, for what's considered private or public domain, that's considered public domain to be chayiv for the malacha of itself. But regarding making acquisition, Kani you could acquire. Right then, what's the reason? Why is it considered? I Rosh Hashanah, you told me you can't do Mashiach. Why in Tzidei Rosh Hashanah, if it's like Rosh Hashanah for Shabbos, could you do a kinyan? I'll tell you what. Because generally the public is not found over there. So it's like a simta, which is an alleyway, which Chazal were Mesakin and Mashiach would work over there. So for what? For Shabbos, you're going to be chayiv like Rosh Hashanah, because ultimately it is in that sense like a public domain, because people will go there. But regarding the halachas of kinyan, of Chesed Mishpat, for that, actually, it will not be considered like Rosh Hashanah. It's like a side, like an alleyway, because the people are not generally there, and the people will be kind of. So that's how you're going to be getting Shabbos and Geneva at the same time. That's one approach. Approach number two, Vasham, he says that this that we're saying, if you're dragging and taking it out, that we said you can be potter because of Kimel Rabbanei. The truth is, we're talking about that you pulled it out to the Rosh Hashanah, to the street. The question you had was that you're not going to have Issa Geneva because you can't do Mashiach Rosh Hashanah. So this is what someone had addressed before. So he's pulling it out with one hand, and then he connects his second hand lamata mishleisha, beneath 3 tfachim, close to the ground, and with one hand he's dragging, and now he pulls it into, and it falls into his other hand, the kibloi, and he receives that stolen purse, and his hand is acquiring for him the stolen purse. How does this work? It's actually Taisa says actually two different answers over here, but our Girsa has it as one answer. Kedurab, like Rava says. Rava says, Yodei Shaladam, a person's hand is chashubala, is significant for him regarding the malacha of hanacha on Shabbos, ka'arba al arba. Although a person's hand is not dal by dal, it's not 4 by 4, but it is like 4 by 4, and 4 by 4 tzvachim, and therefore, just like regarding halacha of Shabbos, it's considered a distinct area. So regarding acquiring, it's also considered a distinct area for acquiring, as if you lift it up above 3 tvachim from the ground. Now, as Rashi points out, however, in Rishus HaYachid, you did not do hagbah, that it should acquire for you before you get the chiyuv of Shabbos. It's only when it comes into the Rishus HaRabim, and that's the same time when you get into Kinyan, that's happening at the same time. That's why it says Kishetzirev, when you combine your second hand, that it shouldn't be any picking up in the Rishus HaYachid, like we're saying, you're dragging. So we want to know, how's it working? Rishus HaRabim. You can't be claiming the name of Rishus HaRabim. I'm not being acquiring from Rishus HaRabim. I'm acquiring because it's coming into my hand. My hand is like a hagbah. So I didn't actually lift it up, but it's considered distinct areas, like my own Switzerland. It's like my own area, my yacht. So when it's like that, which is like hagbah, which it could acquire anywhere. So when I'm pulling it onto the street and it's going into the hand is the hanacha, of course it's considered like makam dalad dalad, and since it's considered like a chashav makam, it's also going to be a kinyan for the person like hagbah when it comes into his hand. That's what Rashi answers how you're having the Issa Geneva and Issa Shabbos boing ke'echad, even though it's into Rishus HaRabim. A third approach, so first the Gemara says Ravachi taught like what we just said, that you're pulling it into the Rishus HaRabim, that would not be kaina. But it's talking about when you combine your other hand and you got it inside, like this second shot that the Gemara just brought of Rav Ashi. Ravina Masni, he taught a third approach. Yeah, no, you're talking about you're pulling it out to the public domain. And you're actually going to acquire for Issa Geneva in Rishus HaRabim, not like everything we assumed up until now. Because the Gemara says, actually, they're disagreeing about regarding a diuk, an inference, in a Mishnah. So you see how the Amayram were learning up Mishnah is a diuk. They're making an inference, and this is the machlekes is based on this. It's not like learn the Mishnah Masechet is Baba Kama. The Mishnah there is told on Perek Meruba when someone steals an animal from a person's private property. So the Mishnah says over there, if let's say someone was dragging the animal, he's pulling it out, umeis, and the ox died, b'shus ba'alam, when he was still in the owner's property, so pater, so the thief is going to be exempt from paying anything because he never acquired it to be liable for einstein, for things that happen beyond his control, which the animal just dies. He didn't stab the animal, it just died, which is oinus. He's not chayav because he was never koined the kinyan genevia because he never left the owner's property. But if he lifted up the animal, even in the owner's property, or he had already taken it out of the owner's property, and then the animal died. No negligence of his own, just died. He's going to be liable because that's called kinyan genevia. You acquired it at least for the liability, even the blindness. You got to give me back an animal that you stole. So the Gemara says, Ravina Dagmadesh, Ravacha Dagmaseh, each one of them is a dag from a different part of the Mishnah to prove this point. If you have Kinyani Geneva in Rishus HaRabim, as follows. Ravina Dagmadesh, he inferred from the beginning of that Mishnah. The Mishnah said, if someone's dragging animals going out, and ended up dying in the owner's property, he never got it out, he said, Pot is going to exempt. Oh, says Ravina, time the Mace B'Shus Bailam. Why are you exempt? Because it died in the owner's property, so you never will claim it. Oh, it's Rishus HaRabim. But if you took it out on his property, it sounds like wherever you took it out to, even to Rishus HaRabim, umeis in the dad chayv b'chayv. Why chayv? Aha, because you had kinyan geneva. You see, you have kinyan geneva even Rishus HaRabim, because it's only in the owner's domain that you don't have. It sounds like the moment you took it out, no matter where you took it out, you can be chayv. Rav Achadayk say he's medayik from the sefer. No, it says he could be if he picked it up, or he took it out, and then it died to be chayiv. So he says, compare the two cases. Compare the case of taking it out to the case of picking it up, because those are the two cases the Mishnah said. Mahag, just like when you pick it up, the Asal Yishu say, it comes to the guy's own domain, because Hagbah is like your hand. That must mean the case when you take it out is also the Asal Yishu came to his property, which is an area that you could call your own. You can't call Times Square your own area. You can't call the public domain your own area. A simta, private alley, you could call your own area. So whenever you see, it's not going to be kind of in Rishus HaRabim. That's the machlekes regarding to the yukim. The Gemara says, wait a second, each one, what do you do with the other one's dik? Each one of them, what do you do with the dik of the other part of the Mishnah? Says the Gemara, no, the Reish is not the good Rav Acha. Because as long as it did not come to his domain, He's not saying don't be medayik. Oh, you see, Rosh Hashanah is going to be kinda because it's only not going to work in the owner's domain. No, as long as you not come to your own domain, which is like a simta or your own area, that is considered Rosh Hashanah. So you cannot be medayik if you took it to Rosh Hashanah, it would work. That's considered still Rosh Hashanah. And the same with Ravina Lakasha, the same is not difficult to Ravina, because we don't say that you compare the cases that, the taking out is similar to the case of picking it up. And therefore, Haitzah could even be, even if it does not come to his own domain, and therefore, it could work even if it's going to be in the Rosh Hashanah. Thank you for any time for hosting us.